Thank you, Steve. Good morning to you all. If y'all would allow me, I'd like to take a minute to recognize one of our icons that we lost 2 days ago. Dodie Anderson has passed away. 92 years old. She was certainly a legend in the Gamecock family. She meant so much to our coaches and our student athletes, and her impact from her philanthropic position, for her enthusiasm and passion. She did so much for the state of South Carolina, USC Upstate, Greenville Tech, the Girl Scouts, and so many other initiatives that she was so passionately involved in. And we're going to miss her dearly. You know, the Dodie Anderson Academic Enrichment Center is a direct result of her. It's been a tremendous asset for our student athletes, one of the greatest impacts as a young person that can experience as being a participant in intercollegiate athletics at our university, and she will be missed dearly by us all. I did have an opportunity after President Caslin was hired to take him up to see Dodie in Greenville, and had a great visit. And she had a great life and a lot of great memories, and certainly has given us far more than we could ever give back. But her memory will live, and we will always smile and think about Dodie Anderson as we enter the Dodie Anderson Academic Center. Thank you for the opportunity to share that. I would like to also tell you that I hope everybody is healthy and safe. We've gone through and are going through an unprecedented time in our history with this global pandemic. I think we probably all read and see too much and listen too much, and it takes us to different places. There's a lot of anxiety. Many people have been affected by this disease. Hopefully, you know, we will get into a better place sooner than later. I can't wait till there's medication and a vaccine and an opportunity to get on the other side of this whole thing. It's affected us in so many ways, and we've got to do our very best to move forward as we social distance and we wear face coverings. That's the only mitigation that we have right now. I encourage you to do that, and hopefully we'll get our campus fired up at the end of August, middle of August. We'll get our students back, and we'll be able to resume classes, whether they're online or in the classroom. But we're looking forward to that. I know you want to probably ask some questions about what has transpired. I'll tell you a little bit about the 10-game schedule that was announced by the SEC. As you saw, the date of our first game will be September 26th, with the conclusion the championship game in Atlanta on December 19th. There is a bye week in somewhere in the middle between games 3, 4 through 6. And also there's an open date on the 12th. Those two dates are available for makeup games should we get in a position that we have a game canceled or postponed, I should say, not canceled, but a postponed game that we have an opportunity to make up. That's the way the schedule was built, 12 weeks, 10 games in 12 weeks, with an opportunity to play a championship game in Atlanta. You may ask why September 26th? As you all know, we have an SEC medical task force that was formed. We've done a wonderful job. Each university had a representative. They worked diligently. I think they met 3 times a week. They recommended, for health and safety purposes, that we start as late in September as possible. So that led to a decision to go out on the 26th. The opportunity that is lost is our non-conference games. That certainly none of us want to be in that situation. Everybody wants to talk about Clemson and the loss of the rivalry. Certainly that's important. We lost 3 other games as well. We tried diligently. I know Dan Radakovich and I have been talking for weeks about doing our very best to somehow keep that game on the schedule. At the end, we were unsuccessful in doing that. And that's, you know, we all wanted to play that game. There's no question about that. I think you would all understand that we didn't want to lose that game, but it was not decided that by the presidents and chancellors in the Southeastern Conference that we would play that game. So it's a 10-game conference schedule only. We talked about health and safety. We brought our student athletes back to campus with our football players at the beginning of June. Since we got men's and women's basketball, soccer teams are back, and our volleyball team is back. That transition and protocol has gone very well as they continue to work out. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to start fall sports and get through this in a very healthy and safe way. We all know that COVID still has a vote, and we're going to have to live with that. We will certainly adjust, but the health and safety of our student athletes, coaches, staff, our fans, you that cover our games are of utmost importance, and that will certainly be factored in as we move forward. So with that, I'll be glad to address some questions.
Let's open up for questions. David Kleininger from the Post and Courier with the first one.
Morning, Ray.
Good
Thanks
morning.
for doing this. Obviously with the Clemson game, that's the big news here. Is there any chance, any appeal or waiver that game could come back on the schedule, or has that ship sailed for good?
I would probably say that it's probably complete at this point. We have been meeting daily. I sometimes ask the same question more than once, but I guess you never say never, but I expect that the schedule will remain intact. They came out in the ACC with a 10+1. We came out with a 10-game schedule with the intent of trying to determine a conference champion. We also realize, this was talked about numerous times on our calls, that while we were trying to play 10 conference games, we might not be able to do that based on the situation with COVID. So we're trying to get it in position to determine a conference champion. That was first and foremost what we're going to do in our conference. Nobody wants to lose the rival games, and certainly we did it. And I've been in the SEC now for nearly 25 years, and the football rivalry as well as the rivalry in other sports is a big deal. And the fact that we're not going to play football is a great concern to me. I'm emotionally affected by that, and I know a lot of our fans are, and we wanted to play that game. We, not to disregard the other three, but we certainly wanted to maintain that rivalry.
Ben Briner from the State is next. Ben?
Hey, Ray, again, thanks for doing this. I wanted to ask first, do you have any sense for the timeline of when the new schedule might be set, might be given to you guys, might be voted on? And also in the meeting on Wednesday, when you guys voted on it, how much discussion was there about those rivalry games, and what was that conversation sort of like?
Well, there was obviously conversation about rivalry games, not just recently, but in the weeks leading up to it, that, there's 4 of us in the SEC that have those rival situations. And I think there were maybe 2 or 3 other games outside of the rivalry situation. So those were conversations that we continued to have, and we tried to build a schedule to get our games played and to determine a champion. We looked at a lot of different models, as you would guess, and that's where we ended up. And I'm sorry, Ben, you had a second part to that question?
Do you guys know, I guess, when you might find out when the new schedule is set, and kind of when that's going to be voted on?
Well, if you look at Twitter, I think it's already set. It seems that everybody's already got it. I don't have it, but everybody else does. No, we don't have it. It's a work in progress. We do have another call today. I'm sure the schedule will be discussed, but it has not been set. I can assure you that I had an earlier conversation with the office, and our schedule is not ready to be released. I don't know who our other 2 opponents are. I've seen things that you guys have seen, but I have not been given our schedule by the SEC.
Next question comes from Phil Kornblut. Phil?
You're on mute, Phil.
Oh, there we go.
Good job.
Thank you.
It's
So
tricky.
it's a tough job. So for the simple-minded fan out there who sees what the ACC did and sees what the SEC did, and the ACC, of course, wants to crown a conference champion as well, and they say, well, why couldn't the SEC just do what the ACC did and throw a +1 in there, maybe start a week earlier? They're operating under the same conditions. Can you answer that question as to why the ACC was able to work it out to cover the rivalry games with their plan, but the SEC could not or refused not to follow the ACC's lead?
I can't answer your question, Phil. I'm not I'm not involved at the Autonomy 5 level as far as commissioners concerned. And I know there was dialogue among all the commissioners, but I can't answer your question. As you know, the ACC came out before we came out with a decision. So they were out first. I'm not familiar with any type of dialogue that may occur or didn't occur. So I cannot answer your question.
Did that make the SEC mad that the ACC jumped out the day before, that perhaps you guys were working together on something and then they came out the day before with their plan, kind of putting the SEC in a secondary position?
I wouldn't agree with the statement that it made anybody mad. I was surprised when they came out. I wasn't expecting them to come out that day. I had read some information that they were considering their models as we were considering ours, but I wouldn't say that's a fair statement that we were mad about it. I think we were focused on what was going on in our league and our leadership, and our presidents and chancellors were intimately involved along the way and ultimately decided what we would do with our schedule. Yes,
the 21 Palmetto Bowl up at Clemson or in Columbia?
We have not discussed that. You know, Dan and we've talked a lot over the last few weeks, obviously, about trying to maintain this game for the 20 season, and we're unable to accomplish that. But we haven't discussed what happens next fall. A lot of people would assume because we missed, we would go up there, but schedules are built in advance, and it could affect the home and away for both of us. But we haven't discussed it, so we'll deal with that in the weeks to come.
Pete Acabelli, AP.
Hey, Ray, I hope you and your gang are all doing well through this. I was wondering how close you guys are to locking down the fan component of these games. When do you think you might have some really concrete information about how many people can get there and how they can get tickets and all that kind of stuff?
Thank you, Pete, and I appreciate your question. I hope your family is doing well. We have built models along the way. Certainly, we've had time to do that. And you saw what came out of the governor's office earlier in the week. So we would have to make a request to have more than 250 people in our stadium, which we will. And we will have the model prepared probably by early next week to share. I don't know at what point the decision will be made. Hopefully, it'll be sooner than later, but we will have to present to the Department of Commerce to show how we will do the ingress, egress, and social distancing inside the stadium. The attendance, I can't tell you exactly what it'll be. I'll speculate today. That's all I can do. Maybe somewhere just north of 20,000. I'm guessing, but that's just a guess at this point.
Thanks.
Let's go to Rick Henry, WIS. Rick.
Thank you, Steve. Hey, Ray, as you look at the restarts in the professional leagues, Major League Baseball and the NBA, WNBA, they seem to be handling it well with the bubble. And when you look at the fact that the students are going to be returning to campus and athletes are going to be mingling with them, how concerned are you about it's going to be much more difficult to keep the virus away from the athletics department?
Well, it is a concern. It's a concern, Rick. I mean, I think every day that I wake up, I get a report on our student athletes that are ones that are on campus right now training for the fall. And those percentages are very positive for us in our little bubble that we're working out. And it's certainly not like the NBA or the WNBA, but Major League Baseball has had its ups and downs. I think there was another negative report today, but that's a concern. I mean, you would expect that when the students come back, there's going to be some sort of spike. Hopefully it won't be too bad for the university, but it's only natural that you bring in a lot of people back that would be the case. Now, keep in mind, probably more than 10,000 students have been in the city for the entire summer, because that's a lot of young people live off campus and stay. So, but we're probably looking at 18 or 20,000 coming back. I'm speculating there. So right now, as I said, our numbers are really good in athletics, and things have taken a good trend as far as keeping young men, young women healthy, and the testing protocols and the symptom checks that have gone very well. But we're hopeful. There's no guarantees. We're not immune to what we're dealing with. So it's a constant monitoring situation, and that will be our first and foremost concern as we try to play sports.
Thanks, Ray.
Let's go to John Whittle.
Hey, Ray, thanks for doing this. Couple of things. I'm sure you've seen a bunch of the schedule models that are out there. Are there any that you prefer for your school? And also, is there a chance where the league could go divisionless like the ACC and completely redo the entire schedule from top to bottom?
I can't answer that. I'll tell you that, many of you know Mark Womack, who is associate commissioner of the SEC, who handles the schedule. He's our schedule maker, and he's the best in the business. I don't know exactly what will be handed down. So I would only be guessing if I told you that. Like many of you, we're very hopeful that we have a season and we can play football, and it's healthy and it's safe, and whatever it is, let's go play. But that's going to come after making sure all of our student athletes and staff and fans and everybody's in a good place.
Let's go to Mitch Brown.
Ray, with students returning and obviously with more bodies and different facilities and buildings on campus, is there going to be maybe a possible not a bubble environment, but just restrictions for student athletes on campus as you try to mitigate the virus?
Well, I don't think there's anything that's going to be in place any more than our regular student body. I mean, the social distancing and the masking are the most important things you can do. If you read all the reports, especially earlier this morning, I read a very positive story about the city of Columbia, Greenville, Spartanburg, Charleston, where the evidence of masking and social distancing have already seen positive trends in lowering the negative output. So hopefully that will continue. That's what we got to work with right now. I mean, habits have to change right now. We're not in a situation of normalcy. And, whether it's a young person going to class or after class or back in the dorm, we have to emphasize the masking and the social distancing. That's what our mitigation factors are right now.
All right, let's go to Matt Connolly. Matt.
Hey, Ray, I know you said there were conversations about whether or not to keep the ACC rivalry. Was there any disagreement? Was there a disagreement in the room about that?
I don't think there's any disagreement. I think you guys know me well enough to know that, back in the day, I coached a lot of games in that rivalry, and part of being an athletics director is enjoying the season of competition for all of your teams. And that's one of those asterisk moments where you get a chance to play your rival. And, I was constantly bringing that up in the scheduling conversation. But first and foremost, you want to get a conference schedule done, and you want to be able to try to play a championship. You want to get as many games in as possible. And that's the way our schedule was built. As I said, we've got 12 weeks to play 10 games, and hopefully the championship on the 19th. And that was a priority. It just didn't work out that there was an opportunity to maintain those rival games or any other non-conference games.
Thank you.
Let's go to Michael Espy. Mike.
Hey, it's actually Cam Gaskins. I forgot
Okay.
to bounce over when I logged in. Coach, my question's about just kind of the rationale behind why the conference schedule is the safest thing for student athletes, because you can travel across state lines, but Clemson can't come down here for whatever reason because of the conference things. I was wondering if you could just better explain why keeping the schedule conference only is the best choice to keep the athletes safe.
Steve, can you repeat that question? The volume was a little bit low.
He's basically asking about the Clemson series and why we're, it's an in-state game. Why is that a problem of playing someone close, and the importance of keeping the conference schedule?
I don't think that was a factor, positive or negative necessarily, that we looked at the distance. I think that could be a factor going forward with all of our fall sports, according to the situation that we're dealing with. But again, the schedule isn't complete for football. We have a volleyball schedule, a soccer schedule. They have been pushed back past September or to September 1st. And there's a lot of things that could be adjusted. But as far as the distance factor, that didn't come into play at this point. There have been some discussions, but it didn't factor into whether or not we were going to play Clemson.
Let's go to Michael Lanana.
Hi, Ray. Thanks for doing this morning. Is the plan still for football to start preseason camp August 6th, or is that something that could be pushed back now with the season starting later?
That's a really good question, and that is a conversation. Currently, the August 6th date or 7th date, is it the 6th or the 7th? That is the start date. Obviously, there's a lot more time now between August 6th or 7th or September 26th. So there's a lot of different times. Schedules will be adjusted. I think that will remain intact, but the adjustments will be in place as far as more time to get acclimated to conditioning, weightlifting. Some programs are a little farther along than others, as we have discussed with each other in the league. But it won't be your normal preseason. I think you would probably look toward the end of August as to getting back to the normal preseason workouts.
Go back to David Cloninger.
Ray, you mentioned that you don't know who the other 2 games on the schedule will be. Does that mean that the original 8 that were on the schedule, the SEC games, will remain intact, including their locations?
That's my understanding, David, and that was, and I could have missed that, but that's my understanding in the league, that your 8 games are set. They don't change. We're just adding 2.
Ben Briner at the State. Ben?
Ray, I wanted to ask a quick question about the non-conference games. Have you spoken to those ADs in terms of some of the financial obligations that were in those contracts and how those things are kind of going to be sorted out between, I know there's clauses for liquidated damages and force majeure and all that?
Yeah, we have had some conversations, and I had some earlier. I think I talked to John Gilbert at East Carolina yesterday, and Matt Hogan and I are talking this morning. We exchanged texts yesterday, and I talked to Coach Johnson about a week ago. So we're working through that. The situation that you're referring to in the contracts, you can interpret that a lot of different ways, but I'm not an expert and don't have a legal background, so that'll be left for determination. But that's not where we want to go. We want to reschedule the games as soon as we possibly can, maintain the relationships that we've had. So I would prefer that's where we go going forward.
Go to John Whittle.
Hey, Ray, not just with football, but with all the other sports going on, have y'all had any student athletes express to you that they don't feel comfortable and want to opt out of the season?
Nobody has expressed that to me. I think there's been some dialogue exchange here and there. I think you've seen a little bit of it around the country, but I think the conversation more is about, are we going to play? And to this point, our football team specifically didn't have a schedule, and now they have a schedule. So I think that'll probably change the mentality a little bit there, with some optimism that, okay, we know exactly what we're going to do. But like I said, I think you've seen a couple of situations around the country where players have opted out, and our young men, young women certainly will have that option if they don't feel comfortable being here or participating, and their scholarships will be honored.
But nobody's come forward with that conversation yet?
No, not to me. No, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Go to Colin Taylor.
Hey, Ray, I was just curious, now that the SEC's kind of got its schedule in place, have you guys talked about what testing might look like in season and any protocols y'all might have once the season actually starts and gets going?
Yes, I can't speak to specifics. I don't think that they've completely been ironed out, but we will have testing protocol prior to the competition, not only for football, but for the other sports as well, at a particular time that will be done by the same testing group, and the protocols will be in place. It'll be very consistent, and it will be the same for both teams.
Pete Acabelli at the AP.
Hey, Ray, before the world went crazy, you guys had gotten that letter from the NCAA about basketball. Was wondering if that, and you had a response due within a month. I was wondering if that process was completely on hold during the pandemic, or if there's any update on what's been going on with that.
Pete, I can't give you any update this morning, but the process has continued, and we're working through that. And I will do my best to get you some information offline and get back to you. I don't know this morning exactly where we are, but I'll be glad to share what I can share with you, and I'll reach back out to you.
Back to Phil Kornbluth.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Can hear you now.
Thank you. Ray, what was your reaction to the NCAA's decision to allow athletes to wear various social justice slogans on their uniforms starting this season? Do you see that as a potential touchy situation with players as slogans are developed and worn and decisions are made about what can be worn and what cannot be worn? How do you view that decision by the NCAA?
Well, I'm going to support our student athletes, Phil. I think you know me well enough that I believe in the First Amendment, and we'll support our student athletes and their feelings and the things that we can do. I know that it's going to vary probably from team to team as to what their passion may be, but they certainly will be supported by me and any action that they would like to take.
Back to Ben Briner.
I wanted to ask, during this process, what kind of a voice was President Caslin? And I know he mentioned advocating in his statement, advocating for the Clemson game. How much did he kind of push and fight for that?
I think that you probably saw some reports that fairly aggressively. I would tell you that is true. He and I had a number of conversations. We've been in constant dialogue, and I sit in on the university side of this FPG group as far as planning for the return to campus for our student body as well as our student athletes. So I've had an opportunity to be with him quite a bit and have conversations. And this was a big deal to us. We wanted to maintain this rivalry. I don't do a whole lot on social media, but for people who don't think that was a big deal, it's a big deal. I mean, as I sit here and talk to you this morning, there's a void that we may not play that game, and right now it's not scheduled. So that's disappointing. And President Caslin was certainly on board with that. I had prepared him that the president chancellors would vote on our schedule. They would make a decision on what we were going to do going forward. And I shared as much as I could about all the dialogue that we had in the room in different directions, the different models, and how they were going to be laid out. But we, as you are informed, he made it a point to try to maintain the rivalry game.
Go back to Colin Taylor.
Ray, you kind of talked about the Department of Commerce presentation and proving egress and ingress. And I'm just curious what else goes into that presentation. What do you have to show them to where you're able to have fans if you want to?
Safety, safety as far as making sure you're doing everything possibly. And Colin, really, you got to go deep into the weeds with the ingress, the egress, the social distancing, common areas, concessions. It won't be the same. Probably be more grab and go type concessions than maybe people are accustomed to. But we'll still try to provide an experience if we have the opportunity to play college football with social distancing. We will, whether it's encouraging or mandating masking, coming into the stadium for sure. If you're out in the bowl, we will encourage that too. But it is worth noting that our medical professionals have told us that for someone to sit in a 3 to 4 hour football game with a mask on is probably not the right thing to do in all circumstances from a health standpoint because of the heat and humidity that we deal with in our footprint. So there's still some things to be worked through. The good news is our modeling is pretty much set, ready to go based on what we're going to do attendance wise. But it's going to be based on social distancing. It's not going to be a 50% stadium or anything like that. We're going to do the social distancing and do it the very best that we can and present that case. And Lance Grantham has worked extremely hard on that. Eric Nichols, Steve Eigenbrot, and others in our department put in a lot of time to prepare for the modeling. And in just a few days, we will make that presentation.
Let's go to Pete Hannity.
Hey, Ray, a couple of questions. First, have you been given the impression, or did President Caslin maybe get the impression that the medical task force recommendation for the 26th was pretty much what killed any chance of doing the 11th game?
I can't speak to that exactly, but I'll tell you, we have epidemiologists on our campus and scientists that participate in our calls. We had one earlier this morning, and the recommendation was start as late as you possibly can. And we settled on September 26th based on their projections and maybe the trends that they may be seeing coming forward. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, doesn't mean it's going to be exact, but that was a recommendation to start late September. I won't tell you that was the mandate or anything like that. I don't think that was the case. I think it was guidance from the SEC Medical Task Force to start late.
Do you sense, though, that had an earlier start date the weekend before or 2 weekends before might have made the outcome different? And I know that you're not on the commissioner level, but did you get a sense that was what was the deal breaker?
Well, I think it would have given us more flexibility. I don't think there's any question about that. And again, I don't get to make those decisions, and I wasn't one that was voting at the end of the day. It was the presidents and chancellors. But with your scenario, being able to go earlier would have given us some flexibility.
And then just to follow up, and you've been in the state long enough to know that occasionally the nice folks who make the laws in the state up the street tend to involve themselves in athletics. Do you get a sense, because earlier, while acknowledging the game is not happening right now, but you did say never, in digesting this over the past 18 hours since the news came out, do you anticipate any governmental intervention to perhaps our state leaders call on the SEC to reconsider an appeal option?
I haven't heard that. I probably shouldn't speak to that. I guarantee you there's interest, but whether there will be intervention or not, I couldn't say that.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Josh Kendall.
Hey, Ray.
Hey, Josh.
As we've seen some reports nationally, globally, that testing is starting to run low again, I wonder if you guys have gotten any indication from DHEC or whoever you get your testing from that you may have lesser access to those tests for a little while, and if you've got a plan for that, or do you feel like you have all the tests you need and will into the season?
I can only share this with you, and it was a conversation earlier today with our FBG groups 1 and 5 that report back to President Caslin. We feel like that we have an opportunity to maintain testing. We went out early with our testing capabilities with about 3 or 4 different locations, and so far that has worked well. We've been able to get results in a timely manner, and we anticipate that we will be okay going forward.
Pete Acabelli has the next question. Pete?
Ray, over the past few months, we've seen athletes from different schools raise issues about the culture of their programs and how things are. I was wondering if you or your staff have kind of continually taken the temperature, had meetings with athletes just to make sure that your culture is where you want it.
Yes, I would tell you, Pete, that we've been extremely active. I had a call earlier in the week with our Student Athlete Advisory Committee, which is represented by all the sports. They have 2 or 3 representatives from their programs. But I'll tell you that all of our coaches have consistently had Zoom calls with their teams to discuss a lot of different factors, including, excuse me, the mental health of what's going on, especially before we got them back onto campus and we were able to work out. But as far as scheduling, there's constant dialogue and contact, had different speakers for different teams. We've been very active and aggressive in that area to make sure that we stay in touch and student athletes stay plugged in and they have an opportunity to be engaged and ask questions and get answers to things that concern them.
I don't see any other hands up this time. Anybody have any questions for Coach before we let him go? I know he's got a hard deadline here in a couple minutes where he's got another commitment. So I guess Phil has one last question. Go ahead, Phil.
Yes. Are you ordering special equipment for the football team, like maybe the splash guards for the face masks, things like that? Anything that you have done looking forward to the season?
Well, Phil, I've asked those same questions from our equipment manager and our trainer, Clint Haggard, and he is experimenting and has looked into acquiring, and I think he might have some different type of face shields, especially from a lineman standpoint, that they may be taking a look at as far as protective gear. I can't speak to more specifics than that, but as you know, we're sort of in the OTA phase right now. That's gone pretty well. When we first got back, we were in those clusters, and we were really isolated and protected from each other. And now with the OTAs, you're more together, and we've still been able to maintain our low number of any issues that we've had with our student athletes. But we'll continue to be very proactive if we have an opportunity to play football this year. But health and safety is number one. Let's not lose sight of that. I know that everybody wants sport. Everybody wants to get back. If it's volleyball, soccer, or football, everybody wants to get back at it. But health and safety is not going to be compromised. If we have any issues, then we'll reverse course. We'll pivot as we did back in the spring. But right now we have a plan, we have a protocol, and we're going to do our very best to move forward when we have that opportunity.